Baby Dove is more than just gentle. It also helps moisturize baby's delicate skin. Created with no parabens, phthalates, or sulfates. Choose Baby Dove. Sana pangtupis ang budget ko. Kaya mo na tol.
These waves can come from as far away as Chile or as close as 80 kilometers offshore. The locally generated tsunamis pose the greatest danger. They strike within minutes of being formed and with awesome power. (10:17 p.m. July 12, 1993). A magnitude 7.8 earthquake rips the ocean floor off the coast of Hokkaido. The epicenter is only 80 kilometers from the tiny island of Okushiri and generates one of the biggest and most destructive tsunamis Japan has ever experienced. Fisherman Jiro Adachi from the village of Aonai knows about tsunamis. He survived one 10 years earlier that also hit Okushiri. When Jiro feels the earthquake, he knows a tsunami is probable. He quickly evacuates his wife and children from their seaside home, sending them to higher ground in the car while he shuts off the gas. He moves swiftly, but not swiftly enough. Just 4 minutes after the quake, the first wave hits him with overwhelming force as it surges to an incredible 15 meters.
It started to pull me back into the sea. I held on to something and thought that I must run to the mountain.
Somehow, Jiro manages to find firm ground. He flees to the safety of a nearby hill. In a few terrifying minutes, the tsunami destroys 80 houses and fishing shacks. But the danger is not over. Out of the darkness, a second wave strikes. Homes, boats, cars and trucks, spared by the first wave, are smashed to pieces. Fires erupt as gas pipes burst. Aonai is under siege. Jiro and other survivors rush to the waterfront to help the injured.
We heard people shouting for help. They were calling, "Help me, help me." I heard a lot of voices, women's voices and children's voices.
Suddenly, amidst the cries for help, Jiro hears something that chills his heart.
Suddenly I heard a familiar voice between wave breaks, so I shouted, "Achan, is that you, Achan?" And then I heard, "Daddy." I heard that from the darkness.
His young daughter is somewhere in the raging sea. As Jiro's family fled, the tsunami's first wave rolled their car and hurled them into the ocean. Jiro dives into the turbulent waters.
Normally I'm a great swimmer, but this was incredibly difficult. Sometimes I was swimming but I couldn't move forward at all. And other times I'd suddenly be pulled backwards by the sea.
Miraculously, father and daughter make it to shore. 7 hours later, the Coast Guard finds Jiro's wife and son kilometers out to sea, clinging to debris. As dawn breaks, the tsunami's power becomes horrifically clear. Large parts of Aonai are completely flattened. Fires continue to rage, and most of the fishing fleet is lost. Across the island, 437 houses are destroyed and more than 800 severely damaged. 198 people are dead. The aftermath of the disaster confronts scientists with an intriguing mystery. The two waves that hit Aonai came from completely different directions.
The first wave of the tsunami came from the west area where the seismic center was, and it attacked only the low part in the south area of Aonai.
But the second wave came from the east, away from the tsunami's source.
The second wave came in just 10 minutes after the first, and it attacked all of this area of Aonai.
The first wave that hit the west coast of Okushiri came directly from the source. But then, just like in Hawaii, the tsunami wrapped around the island, creating a second wave that struck Aonai from the opposite direction. But the wraparound effect does not explain why the tsunami hit Okushiri with such brutal force. The reason is the extreme proximity of the event which created the tsunami. After a tsunami is generated, it radiates out like ripples on a pond. As the ripples expand wider and wider, the energy spreads out over a larger area. The closer the source of the tsunami is to the impact zone, the more concentrated the energy. Okushiri was only 80 kilometers from the source, so it received the full brunt of the tsunami. Just north of Aonai, the waves reached a staggering 31 meters. Today, the legacy of the 1993 tsunami is set in concrete. Huge walls up to 11 meters high and extending 14 kilometers along the coast stand guard against the sea. Powerful steel gates protect river mouths, and the harbor is bolstered by concrete blocks to reduce wave impact. These ramparts against the waves are stronger than normal sea walls for good reason. The forces they must withstand are utterly different. Normal waves form through the transfer of energy from the wind to the ocean surface. Tsunamis are generated by phenomenal transfers of energy. Even the largest wind waves have a maximum wavelength from crest to crest of a few hundred meters. Tsunamis can have wavelengths of hundreds of kilometers. When they hit, they keep coming and coming. In a unique experiment, scientists in Japan are measuring the impact of those forces. At this lab in Kanagawa, engineers are using the largest man-made tsunami in the world to help design stronger coastal structures. This machine can generate waves more than 3 meters high, propelling 300 cubic meters of water down a 180-meter long chute.
The best thing is to know the characteristics of the power of tsunami in each situation and build buildings according to those characteristics.
Taro Arikawa leads a team that measures the power of tsunamis under controlled conditions. This tsunami is only 2/3 of a meter high, but it strikes with 1 ton per square meter of power. To demonstrate what that kind of power can do, Arikawa puts himself in the wave's line of fire. Without the rope and harness, he'd be swept away by this miniature tsunami. Bigger tsunamis are even more powerful. This 2.4-meter wave hits with the force of 10 tons per square meter. Even after the initial impact, it continues to surge forward with a sustained pressure of 4 tons per square meter. The tsunami in Okushiri was much higher and hundreds of times more powerful. Scientists here believe their studies will translate into stronger and better engineered structures, capable of withstanding tsunami strikes.
Once we can reduce the power, the reduced destructive power of tsunami coming ashore would not cause as much damage.
The Okushiri event shows how destructive a local tsunami can be. It strikes with undiluted power and too quickly to respond. But that disaster was eclipsed by a far bigger and more deadly tsunami. A wave generated by an earthquake so powerful it moved the entire planet. A wave that takes us one step closer to a mega disaster. The tsunami that hit Okushiri, Japan, came from just 80 kilometers away and reached a run-up height of 31 meters. It killed 198 people and destroyed most of the fishing village of Aonai. But it pales in comparison to the deadliest tsunami of modern times. (7:58 a.m. December 26, 2004). Deep in the ocean off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, 1,200 kilometers of the Earth's crust ruptures in the second largest earthquake ever. 100 kilometers of the Earth's crust ruptures in the second largest earthquake ever recorded. The 9.3 quake shatters buildings and destroys lives. But it is just a forerunner of an even more horrific disaster. An epic tsunami spreads across the entire Indian Ocean, striking 12 countries. As with Okushiri, Japan, the local effects are the most immediate and the most devastating. 16 minutes after the quake and 250 kilometers from its epicenter, northern Sumatra is struck by 35-meter-high waves. The capital city of Banda Aceh is decimated. More than 160,000 people are killed. Coastal engineer Jose Borrero arrived in Banda Aceh 4 days behind the tsunami.
I've seen hurricane damage, and I've seen some flood damage before, and I've seen a lot of tsunami after effects before also, but this definitely was the worst. What was amazing about it was the scale.
70% of all buildings in Banda Aceh are flattened. More than 70 kilometers of coastline show evidence of wave heights above 30 meters.
It was a level of destruction that was over hundreds of miles of the coastline, the same level of destruction. So it wasn't just isolated pockets of areas that were wiped out, but the entire coast and then the entire city of Banda Aceh.
An hour and a half after Banda Aceh is leveled, the tsunami strikes Thailand. A wall of water swamps beachside villas, hotels, and villages.
That wave is a good 15, 20 feet tall. Easy. Get in.
More than 8,000 people die. (2,000 kilometers to the west, on the island nation of Sri Lanka, 100 billion tons of water surges inland, killing 35,000 people and leaving another 500,000 homeless. In all, nearly 230,000 people die in the most devastating tsunami in recorded history. The death toll higher than for all other major tsunamis in the past 300 years combined. The power of the earthquake that triggered the tsunami was staggering. The entire planet's sea level rose by 1/10 of a millimeter. Every spot on Earth moved at least 1 centimeter. As scientists struggle to comprehend the enormity of the event, a bizarre anomaly comes to light. One that took an additional tragic toll. The morning of December 26 is quietly dawning on the peaceful shores of Galle, Sri Lanka. British tourists Camilla and Dominic Welby are sleeping in their beachside bungalow with their 11-year-old son, Hector. Suddenly, Dominic is wakened by a strange noise.
I went outside onto the veranda and I noticed that the water, which should have been at low tide, was up against the wall of the garden.
What Dominic is seeing, without realizing it, is the first sign of the tsunami. At the point of its creation, the bottom of the tsunami, called the negative wave, went east towards Thailand and Indonesia, while the top, called the positive wave, went west towards Sri Lanka. When the bottom of a wave arrives first, gravity sucks the water out, lowering the sea level. When the top of a wave arrives first, it comes like a flood. This is what the Welbys are experiencing.
I didn't know what it was. And at that moment, the floor exploded.
The tsunami rushes in, destroying the bungalow.
The force of the water was phenomenal. You know, to be exploded out of your bed, you know, to feel a piece of furniture just be thrown up into the air and to be thrown off it and to have to jump and to then be sucked out and tossed around like being in a washing machine.
The couple grab their son and scramble into the bathroom.
With each wave, with the intensity of each wave, because it would fill up the shower cubicle completely, we would be swirling around underwater, trying to, you know, regain our purchase on whatever we could find.
As the waves continue to pound, the concrete walls of the bathroom begin to crumble. Hector is trapped under a large piece of concrete, struggling to keep his head above water.
The idea of your child dying before you it's nothing worse.
A third wave surges over Hector's head. He's seconds from death. But instead of drowning him, miraculously it lifts the concrete slab off his foot and releases him. The wave that's caused so much death in this one instance is life-saving. But mostly, the peculiar behavior of tsunami waves proves deadly. Surging forward and sucking back, billions of tons of swift-moving water carry a dangerous mass of deadly projectiles, broken timber, glass, metal, and vehicles. The third wave turned Galle into one of the hardest-hit areas in the nation. As the people of Sri Lanka struggle to recover, tsunami scientists like James Goff arrive in the devastated nation.
One of the really difficult things when you go into these areas is you are going there because you have a mission to learn about the tsunami from a scientific point of view. It's very important to learn these things, and yet there is the human tragedy going on around you, and it's very difficult to isolate yourself from that human tragedy.
Amidst the horror, Goff and his colleagues discover the oddity of the third wave.
So there's Galle quietly sitting there, recovering from being hit by two waves, and then bang.
How and why the Galle area was hit by this third wave intrigued experts. Where did it come from? The first clue in the mystery was uncovered by looking at a global map. Sri Lanka is directly in the line of fire of the tsunami.
Sri Lanka was basically staring down the barrel of a loaded gun in a way.
The second clue came only after careful analysis of the tsunami's unique behavior.
So the tsunami wave goes all the way past Sri Lanka, heading off to the east coast of Africa. But on the way, whack, it hits into the Maldives, and a lot of the energy is reflected back from the Maldives, and the first place that hits is Galle.
The tsunami was so powerful, its reflected energy carried a third wave 800 kilometers back across the Indian Ocean. In total, over 4,000 people died in the Galle region. The tragedy confirmed scientists' theories about the phenomenal reflective power of tsunamis. The Indian Ocean tsunami continues to provide scientists with complex and compelling new data, most of which is still being processed.
It's really difficult to say right now what the Boxing Day tsunami taught us compared to what we didn't know before, because it's taught us so much. It taught us that we actually don't know a lot and that we have a lot more to learn.
What the Welbys learned is that life is fleeting and precious. In appreciation for their survival and in recognition of the thousands that did not, they spearheaded a fundraising effort back home in England. To date, they've raised $25,000 for the people of Galle. Many mysteries about the Indian Ocean tsunami remain unanswered. One of the biggest questions is how the highest waves could possibly have reached a staggering run-up height of 35 meters. Far beyond what had been thought physically possible by an earthquake-triggered tsunami. But as huge as that tsunami was, it is not the biggest wave to strike in recent history. Landslides can trigger a different kind of killer wave, producing a tsunami of monstrous size. And scientists believe a mega tsunami looms in our future, a wave of such epic proportions that nothing like it has been seen since prehistoric times. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami unleashed a series of enormous and deadly waves that had run-ups of 35 meters. But they are dwarfed by another wave that forced scientists to become detectives. What they discovered was a new kind of tsunami, one of unimaginable size and power. In a remote bay in southwest Alaska, a native legend tells